So thanks to everyone for coming. It looks like we have a large number of community members and some contractors as well. So that's great to have a little bit of variety. This webinar is just going to be introducing the Acton Clean Heating Challenge, which is a program that's being run by the town of Acton, and Abode Energy Management will be the technical consultant for the program and helping administer it. So we're really excited to be launching this. We are excited for the work that we'll be doing, and I will turn it all over to Andrea briefly to talk about the program and its goals, and then we can get on the way talking about it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Becerra, and I'm the Sustainability Director for the town of Acton. We're really excited to kick off this work with Abode, and this work really is a product of residents from the community who have encouraged the town to think about ways to make it easier for residents and business owners to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and electrify their home. This includes the Climate Emergency Declaration, which was voted for at a special town meeting last year, which calls for rapid action on climate, as well as support from members of the Green Advisory Board and the coalition of volunteers from Energize Acton, many of which I see here in the participant list today. And they've been doing a lot of really great work pushing this initiative. As some of you know, buildings makes up a large portion of emissions here in Acton. So clean heating and cooling is only the beginning of the program. And today we will be focusing specifically on this component of our greenhouse gas emissions. But we're looking forward to working with Abode to continue expanding the work to include expert support for EV adoption and solar rooftop installation in the future as well. In the meantime, I'm very excited to present Abode, and I'll pass the mic back up to them.
Great. Mike, could we go to the next slide for the agenda? So we're just going to do a quick introduction on the program and who Abode is and what our role in the program is, where our experience in the industry is, and then we can get into some of those promoted technologies that Andrea was mentioning. And we will, in about a month or so, be doing another more comprehensive technology-focused webinar that will be more of a 101 of the technologies that are available for install, contractors that you can connect with if you're a resident looking to install them, as well as some of the incentives and rebates that are available to help with the costs of installing those technologies. But so if we could go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about Abode. And before we do, just if you have any questions, there is a Q&A feature. We will be taking questions at the end. And if you're on the phone, you can ask questions by pressing *9, and then we'll see you as having raised your hand and can try to slot you in for questions. Next slide. So Abode is a company. We are based nearby to Acton in Concord, although we are quite scattered at the moment given COVID and the remote work landscape, but we have worked as a contractor and a lead vendor in utility programs for large utilities and smaller municipal utilities as well. So we have background as contractors. A lot of our employees on the team have worked in home performance programs, selling and installing air source heat pumps, doing solar installs as well. And we have, wide-ranging experience beyond that in green financing and things related to that. We are the lead vendor for National Grid, so we oversee the home performance contractor pathway for customers of National Grid. And in that capacity, we oversee home performance contractors that are delivering about 30,000 energy assessments and 18,000 weatherization jobs per year. We also provide high quality training to crew leads and other industry professionals through the Building Performance Institute and the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. So we're excited to be, sort of funneling all of those roles into our work here with Acton as we move forward. Next slide. So Andrea mentioned this, I think, in a lot better detail than I did, but just an overview here. The program is designed to help contractors, residents, and the town of Acton achieve goals together. So primarily the first focus here is increasing adoption of air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and other energy efficient technologies such as solar hot water heaters, heat pump water heaters, and things of that nature. And while we're doing that, we want to increase customer satisfaction and contractor success. So really helping to build those relationships between customers and contractors to promote the technologies and increase the number of systems being installed. Through the process, we provide customer education, and we also engage with contractors who are installing the systems. We're happy to be a technical resource, and we love talking about this stuff. So we're happy to engage with you at any point throughout the process. Next slide. So here I will turn it over to my colleague, Mike Simons, who is the technical lead on the program, and he can talk a little bit about his experience as well as some of the technologies that we're promoting here.
Hello, Acton. My name is Mike Simons, and I will be the lead technical consultant as far as all of the residential questions come in. Just a little bit about me. I have a 100-year-old home. I trained about 100 energy specialists, and I've conducted about 1,000 energy audits. I've been in a lot of homes, old homes, new homes. I have a very good understanding of how they work. And I'm also, I guess, as you can see behind me, I'm somewhat agnostic as far as mechanical systems go. So I have a steam system back over here, but over to this side, I'm in 72-degree bliss right now with my ductless mini split. So I do understand old and new, and I think I have a pretty darn good understanding of getting homes to where they need to be. With my own home, I purchased it a year ago. I've gone through the full mass save weatherization program. I put in about $1,800 worth of weatherization. I changed up all my windows to Energy Star ones. I have a fieldstone foundation. I have a poured cement foundation. It's like I do have a really good understanding of like how to deal with older homes and how to get people on the path to decarbonization. In addition, with just my experience with the Mass Save program, with the Mass CEC programs through the DOER, I also have a very good understanding of how to actually pay for these things and all of the rebates and incentives that are available today to, really make these projects a reality. So I am happy to sit down and talk with anyone, whether it is specifically about air source heat pumps, or if it is really about decarbonization and all of the things that we'll need to be considering as we do get our homes to where they need to be for 2030 and 2050. And I'll go back over to you, Ryan.
All right, so that's you and Abode, and now we're going to talk about some of those specific technologies that we're promoting at the front end of this program. So back to you, Mike.
All right, perfect. So, and I see Deborah's comment with wanting to be on the list for a consultation, and do know that we will be talking about how to sign up for these, but everything is virtual, everything is over Zoom, and there's tons of availability. So anyone who does want to get one ASAP, you're more than welcome to, and we'll review that shortly. But yeah, I can kind of speak broadly with like why the town of Acton is so excited about air source heat pumps, and it really is with the rest of the states in the Northeast. It's the technology is market ready, and it's going to have a huge role in our decarbonization pathways. And the reason for this is that there's how a heat pump works is you put in 1 unit of energy, and with a traditional system, you put in 1 unit of energy, and then you're losing like. With my steam system, you're probably losing about 30% or 25%, just even actually like getting that water in the boiler and switching it over to a gas to then go up through the pipes. And then there's other losses that are going up a chimney. So for my gas steam system, I'm putting in $1 and I'm only getting about 60 cents worth of heat into my home. With the toaster, you put in like $1 of energy in the toaster, and it actually puts out $1 worth of heat. And most of that's like going into your toast. Some of it's going into your kitchen. But with a heat pump, you're literally putting in $1 worth of energy, and it's spitting out like 2.8, 2.7 units of heat over the course of the year. On the coldest of cold days, it may only be 2 units of heat. On a 47-degree day, it may be putting out 4.5 units of heat. So it's really quite magical, I think, when you do think of it on like the energy efficiency policy side. So What's so exciting about heat pumps is when you do look at these things, it's like you're putting in 1 unit of energy. You're not losing any of it to stack losses. You're not losing any of it to distribution losses. And especially with ductless, every single bit of that energy is coming out to the home. And what that means today is when you are just looking at how much these things cost, an air source heat pump is comparable almost in price to natural gas for the cost per BTU. And that's really exciting because the one thing that natural gas is going for it, it's relatively cheap. It's not relatively clean right now. It's not relatively clean. So heat pumps, they're exciting because they're extremely efficient. They're cost competitive to natural gas. And if you're heating with home heating oil or you're heating with propane or electric resistance, an absolute no-brainer with moving over to this technology. So Acton is also, I guess, excited about heat pumps with just how they actually work and how they actually move energy. So how a heat pump works, it's the same exact way as a refrigerator. It takes the heat from inside of the box and moves it outside. So if we are thinking about a heat pump in the wintertime, what this is doing is taking the heat from the outside air and moving it inside. And that may seem a little curious because if outside's 30 degrees and inside 70, how are we taking heat from outside and moving it inside? And the way that it is able to do it is just through the refrigeration process. So how it starts off is, say 0 degrees is a lot colder than 30 degrees. So if you have 0 degree refrigerant inside of cold tubes, inside of cold copper refrigerant tubes, in 30 degree air passing over it, that 30 degree is going to migrate into that really cold refrigerant. It brings it inside to the ductless unit or a ducted unit. It compresses the heck out of it. It makes it 80 degrees. And then the air from inside of your home, the 65 degree air passes over that 80 degree refrigerant. Your house absorbs the heat, it brings it outside, it drops the pressure, it makes the refrigerant 0 again. It all sounds pretty technical, but like it just works. So like, how does a heat pump work? They work great. So that's, I think, one of the big takeaways is just know that this technology works great, it's affordable, and it may seem new to us, but in Japan, say this technology is older than the VCR. It's been around for a really long time. It's just migrating over to our market because now we do care about our energy, we do care about our natural resources, we do care about our climate, and this is really kind of a technology that makes it really easy to retrofit into existing homes. When you are thinking about air source heat pumps, most of the time people are thinking about ductless mini splits. So just some examples of what these look like. You have a unit outside, goes to a unit inside. This could be great if there is a finished attic that's really hard to heat, or a master bedroom on the second floor that like it's the only room where you need an air conditioning in, or it's a great room, or if it's an addition, or if it's like a room that does have a wildly different load. A 1-for-1 mini split makes a lot of sense. I was just speaking with an Acton resident who converted a garage into his wife's art studio. Perfect application for it. So that's kind of like an easy way to be able to like, 1, adopt this technology and make a room more comfortable, or 2, there's nothing wrong with using the technology the same way you would a wood stove or a pellet stove. So with just putting in 1 unit, and then kind of having like comfort go from like very comfortable where the unit is to slightly less comfortable throughout the house, that's a good way to never burn fossil fuels ever again. But there could be some comfort compromises along the way. One additional option is to consider like a multi-zone. So you have 1 unit outside, and that unit outside is talking to a unit in their family room. It's talking to a unit in the master bedroom. It's talking to a unit in the kitchen. So do know that as you are thinking about ductless systems, there's really going to be 2 different ways to go, and neither is right nor wrong. It's really just like, how much do you want to budget for moving off of fossil fuels, or how much do you want to budget to make your home more comfortable? This slide is just a tiny bit out of context because we don't know what this home looks like in this case, but I can just tell you a little bit about it. It's like a 2,000 square foot home. It has insulation everywhere. It's like R13 in the wall, like 3 inches of insulation in the wall, 6 inches in the attic. It's like a standard type of home. And these numbers are just pulling it from over the course of the year, the course of 20 years. Like if prices were set in stone today, how much would this system cost over its lifespan, and how much CO2 equivalents of emissions would each system be generating on today's grid? And the thing that I do want to just highlight over here is that with a well-designed air source heat pump, the emissions, it's about 40% less than natural gas. The emissions is half of home heating oil. The cost is cheaper than home heating oil, cheaper than propane, cheaper than electric resistance. Yes, it is costing about 20 to 30% more if this is your only way to go, versus natural gas today. But do just keep in mind that, like, yes, these systems, the operating cost is competitive to natural gas, and the emissions is 40% less. And this will tie in a lot to something that we'll be reviewing a little bit later, and it does tie into why Acton's so excited, is it's 40% less than natural gas today as far as CO2 equivalents go, but every single year the grid is getting a lot greener. We're adding more renewables. We're going to be in very short order adding offsite wind into our grid mix. So at some point our grid is going to be really producing, zero CO2 emissions as we are adopting all renewables. And if you have natural gas in the home, home heating oil in the home, the amount of emissions is more or less fixed, except if you do weatherize and air seal and button it up. But with air source heat pumps, it does get cleaner every single year that you're using this technology. And I just saw a question pop up in the chat with whether or not the costs are for existing houses correct. Is this true for new construction? New construction, the envelope is a lot tighter, and the amount of energy used is a lot lower. So for new construction compared to the one that was modeled for here, it's about half. And we will touch on solar PV slightly, but that is really a way to get the operating costs actually less than natural gas. And sorry. So as far as rebates and tax credits, as far as what's available, it's complicated. So Mass Save, they have rebates for air source heat pumps. The DOER, they have an alternative energy certificate program that does help out with cost. The Mass Clean Energy Center for my own heat pump project, I got a substantial rebate from them. That program has ended, but a new program next year a decarbonization program will be coming out, and we assume that there's going to be some good money from the Mass CEC for that. Clear Result, they administer the Mass Save program. There's someone to be aware of. ICF, if you're building a new house, if you're putting an addition on your home, they handle the renovations and new constructions program. We're kind of in the mix with all of these different organizations. And what I can just say over here is, like, a lot of times for an air source heat, like the last person that I was just speaking with, it's like he's going to be going through Mass Save to get his weatherization incentives, but he's going to be reaching out to the DOER to get a knob and tube abatement, grant. And then it's like for heat pumps, that's back to Mass Save. But if the project doesn't start until next year, maybe there's going to be some money from the Mass CEC. So, like, there's a lot of different organizations that do have rebates and incentives and grants and things like that. And I do hope to be a resource in helping people navigate all of the different policies and how to take full advantage of them. Another technology that is covered as part of our scope is called ground source heat pump that works pretty much identical to air source heat pump, except instead of just pulling the heat from the outside air, it's going to be pulling the heat from the ground. And we talked briefly about coefficients of performance. And the big difference over here is for this heat pump, let's say in the winter, instead of pulling heat off of 25-degree air, where there's not a ton of it, so the fan, the motors, all of the components of the heat pump need to work really, really hard to kind of pull enough energy into the house. to compress it, heat it up, and send it where it needs to go. It's a lot easier to do that if it's pulling it from the ground, which is at 45 degrees or 50 degrees. This ends up, instead of having a heat pump with a coefficient of performance of somewhere between like 2.5 and 3 over the course of the year, to coefficients of performance of somewhere between 3 and 5. So there is a big boost in energy efficiency with going with a ground source heat pump. What is on the flip side is earthwork, site work, drilling, excavation. All of that is a substantial investment into the infrastructure of your home. So these systems do cost a lot more when you are looking at solely the upfront cost. So do know, ground source heat pump, it is a lot more efficient than an air source heat pump. The other reason why people really like geothermal systems or ground source heat pumps is there's a bit more that you can actually do with the heat pump. So with most air source heat pumps, they can go into ductwork or they can go into ductless units. With a ground source heat pump, you can send them through ductwork. So it could be an air-based system, or you could also have a ground source heat pump that's tied into hydronics. And a lot of people like hydronics or heating with water because arguments would be made that it's more quiet, it's more comfortable. There could be that it's cleaner, there's less dust, there's less pressure imbalances through the house. So some people are really excited about the ability with ground source to be able to heat with hydronics. And it also does address one of the things that air source doesn't, with what to do about our domestic hot water. So in the refrigeration cycle, one of the cool things that a ground source heat pump can do is you can use like the superheat portion of the refrigeration cycle to preheat your domestic hot water. So if you are using electricity to heat it up the rest of the way or any other fuel, there's an additional savings that could be had over there. Now, I think the real reason why most people do end up choosing geothermal isn't necessarily the higher performance or the fact that you could do hydronics. It really is to do with the aesthetic, site conditions, and kind of the concern about a backup. So with air source heat pumps, you're always going to have the outdoor units, and they're always going to be in New England and in all 4 seasons. So that could be like snow apocalypse type of events. It could be dealing with freezing rainstorms that encase the whole town for a week. It could just be that you're in a historical district and you just don't like the look of the outdoor equipment, or the town or the neighbors or someone doesn't like the look of the outdoor equipment or the sound level that it puts out, even though they're significantly quieter than a central AC ever would be. So with ground source heat pumps, it's just exciting because there's no outdoor equipment whatsoever to get damaged or disabled or requiring service. Once it's in there, it's the piping that they use, it's like good for 100 years. So yeah, it's something to consider. And I guess the other thing that I don't have about air source heat pumps that in retrospect I should have, it is an amazing tax credit. So 26% of the entire project. So that's all the site work, that's the equipment, that's the labor, like all of the ducting, that's eligible for a 26% federal tax credit for. And really what that means is for like bigger homes, it's like the cost of going air source, ducted air source throughout the home, or the cost of going geothermal. They actually are somewhat comparable in pricing when all said and done. So yes, the technology does cost a little bit more, but it really is really probably the right solution for a handful of homes in Acton, especially if it's an older, leakier home that's impossible to properly retrofit. So don't forget about domestic hot water. So domestic hot water is the water that's coming out of faucets, sinks, showers, dishwashers, all of those things. It's usually a separate system than the heating system. But one of the things to be keeping in mind, especially with newer homes, is that homes are always going to become more energy efficient. Like, yes, there is some things that's making our us use less hot water, but every year as the heating load goes down and down because of energy code, there's still at some point the highest load inside of the home isn't going to be the heating load or the cooling load, especially in like net zero or passive style homes. The highest load in the building as far as the amount of carbon is being produced is related to the domestic hot water. So all homes, it's very easy to retrofit your domestic hot water to a clean one. So one way to do it is through solar hot water systems, also called solar thermal. There's two different types of them. There's the flat plate collectors and the evacuated tubes. If you have plenty of room, because you haven't already gone solar PV, the flat plate collectors are a great way to go. They produce a little less energy per square foot, but there's probably less issues with maintenance. They like literally last like 30 years. So yeah, you put in either of these systems, you're probably looking at displacing 60–70% of your annual energy use that goes into domestic hot water. And all of these, I know that it's like clean heating technology. We're trying to get people off of fossil fuels. But with both of these types of systems, the remaining 30% or 20% of when these panels aren't collecting, it's cloudy, it's snowing, it's snowy, the collectors are covered in snow, these can be integrated into existing like fossil fuel-based systems. So your backup, when this isn't generating, could be electric resistance, or it could be a on-demand natural gas system, but you're still taking like 100% of a fossil fuel load and you're cutting it by 70%. It's heading in the right direction. It's getting us ready for 2030, 2050. So those are two really good ways to go. And this is an exciting thing as well. So there's two different types of heat pump hot water heaters, and I think a lot of people may be familiar with one of them. It's called like a hybrid system, where there's a heat pump sitting on top of an electric resistance hot water heater. And that just takes air and heat from the basement and passes it over the coil, which is really cold, and it sends that heat into the domestic hot water tank. And one of the byproducts is cold air or cool air, as well as dry air, because the coils were really cold, so all of the moisture that was in the air condensed off of it. And that's a really good solution if you have like a fieldstone foundation and it's damp and you're running a humidifier down there all over the year. In that, you put in 1 unit of energy, you get out about 2.5 units of heat. Hold on, buddy. Sorry, I got a son. He may be coming in any moment now. This is another option where it's a solar assisted heat pump water heater. And instead of having the heat pump element sitting on top, it just has it on the outside. And that's just collecting the radiant energy from the sun, and it's bringing it into the heat pump that's in the water heater and putting it into the basement. Or even if the sun's not shining and the ground's still 45 degrees, that ground 45 degrees is still like radiating out onto that panel that could be in 20-degree ambient air. So it's still absorbing energy day and night. So this is kind of a really cool, new to market, latest and greatest technology that some contractors are offering now as well for decarbonizing your domestic hot water. I think this is actually who, let me talk about this overarching piece over here. The cost of solar is just like, if you're just looking at how much it costs per watt, it's like, it's completely crashed over the last 10 years, which is unbelievable for consumers and for residents. So when I kind of started in like doing energy efficiency work, it really was $8, over $8 a watt. I'm going solar myself through Tesla, and it's been a long process, and I still don't have panels on my roof. But the cost that I'm paying per watt from them is $2 per watt. And really what that means, if we do kind of refresh our memory and we looked at that chart that showed like how heat pumps are cost competitive to natural gas, or just a little bit more, is it just wins. Like when you're able to tie a heat pump, whether air source or ground source, and you're looking at it over the course of 20 years, it's so much cheaper to be heating with a heat pump than it is to be heating with natural gas when that heat pump is tied to solar. And the reason for that is that, like just dollars and cents. There's just so much incentives and so much money that's out there for adopting this technology and making this decision. So the DOER, they have the SMART program where they literally are paying you for the electricity that's generated. The investor-owned utilities, they have to do retail net metering, and that means that you can sell them a kilowatt hour of electricity for 24 cents, and you can buy it back from them for 24 cents. And that's true up to 10 kW, which is most residential systems should be that or less, even with heating with a heat pump. The IRS, there's a 26% federal tax credit, which goes a really long way into making these systems affordable. So if the system costs $10,000, you're getting 26% of it back that year if you have the tax liability for that year. And if you don't, you can roll it over, and roll it over until you can collect the whole amount. And then the state of Massachusetts has a $1,000 tax credit as well. So pretty much any time with solar, it is going to be cost effective. It is going to be the right decision to be tying your heat pump to the clean energy that could be coming straight off of your roof. Ryan, would you want to take it from here, and I can just read through some of the comments?
Sure, gladly. So for the residents who are on today's call, there is a clear place to start. I know that many of you in the comments mentioned wanting to be on the consultation list. Well, you can take the bull by the horns and schedule that consultation yourself by going to the Acton Clean Energy Challenge webpage that is newly launched, or you can navigate directly to the scheduling tool that we use. That's abode.energy/consultation. And what that will allow you to do is to select what type of consultation you're most looking for, whether it's a technology 101 quote comparison if you've started receiving quotes from contractors, or more of a comprehensive technical review of your home and the project that you're trying to undertake. So you select the project type or consultation type that best applies to your situation, and then you can schedule directly by selecting a date and time on the calendar and providing some details on your home and your goals. So that is a great place to start as a resident. And I had mentioned that we will be having, a more widespread technology-based webinar next month. So those of you that are here today, I think you've got the inside scoop and can get ahead of the rush once that webinar takes place. Next slide. So this is just a plug to think about your home comprehensively. We are big advocates, especially through our work in the Mass Save program, for treating your home's thermal envelope as well. Reducing the air leakage out of your home and increasing the levels of insulation in your walls and your attic will greatly reduce the energy demand that you have. So any system that you have in place, whether it's fossil fuel based or a heat pump, will just use significantly less energy if you're taking into account the thermal envelope of your home. So you can schedule a home energy assessment at no cost through the Mass Save program, and that can be done through partners. We're partnered with All In Energy to connect residents with home energy assessment services. And just in case people aren't quite familiar with the Mass Save process, basically how it works is you're connected with a contractor who completes your home energy assessment at no cost. And then they provide you with some resources for appliance rebates, as well as a contract of Mass Save weatherization work that's completed at a standard 75% incentive. And then in certain cases for homes with multiple units, as well as renter occupied units, there's actually an even higher incentive. So you might be paying as low as 0% of the project cost for that weatherization work. So we would encourage you to do that. And one other note on the home energy assessment process is that it does also grant you access to the Mass Save Heat Loan, which is a great financing program that is unique to the state of Massachusetts. It's a 0% loan over a 7-year payback period, and it's fantastic. It can be, a huge make or break factor for installing some of these systems. Next slide. And as far as working with contractors, so the big one that I would point you to is the participating contractor list there on the left side. That's another resource that's hosted on Abode's website, and some of the contractors who are on today's call are actually participating contractors on that list. So it's an inclusive list, and you can filter it by the types of systems that you're looking at having installed, and from there can navigate to the particular contractors that catch your eye and speak with them to get proposals for your home for the types of systems that you're looking to have installed. Mike, I don't know if you want to touch on any of the others there. I'm not super familiar with them.
Yeah, with the and this is like if you're like kind of nerdy and you're like comfortable with pivot tables, but the Mass CEC's public records is like, in my mind, like the best resource that's out there, because you can go and you can filter it by like town and see all of the contractors that have worked in your town for any of their rebate programs. And then you can also further filter things where you're, you know, trying to find the contractors that have worked in like similar size homes and things around that nature. So I think that their public records is like really good, but you can also do like nerdy things with like pivot tables, and you see like each of the contractors and how many pieces of outdoor equipment they like to install based off of square footage. So that's like really cool. The manufacturers' websites are great just because you can punch in your zip code and it'll just pull up the list of local contractors. So I saw Endless Energy was over here, and they're on Fujitsu's list when you go and punch in the Acton zip code. So yeah, it's a good place to find local contractors. And one of the things that I will say with my own experience with doing these consultations for a little bit, it is super important to make sure that the contractors have gone through like manufacturers training. A lot of people, even like plumbers, they kind of look at these systems. It's like, oh, it's just, you know, outdoor unit, indoor unit, connect the refrigerant, pump it full, you know, and just like charge it, and then we can walk away and we're done. But there is a lot of like little nuances that that all of the manufacturers do have, that do provide to their installers, that do make these systems a success and performing the way that they were designed to be. So yeah, I do think that the punching in the zip code on the manufacturers' websites is a good place to find contractors as well.
And on that note, I should also add that for the participating contractor list, although it is an inclusive list, there is an application process. We check on those manufacturers' trainings as well as customer references and things of that nature. So the idea is that that participating contractor list is a resource that you can use with confidence, that the contractors are, you know, have the expertise and the experience with the systems that you're looking to install. Next slide. Great, so that's the resident side of things, and then the contractor side of things. Next slide. So in order to get onto that participating contractor list, like I mentioned, there are some qualifications that are necessary in order to be represented on it. The application process, if you're not on there already, is fairly easy. If you are a participating contractor in one of our other communities that we're working in, but not on Acton's list so far, just let us know and we can add you onto that list. There isn't anything unique about the application process for Acton. If you're not on the list in any of our other communities, the first step would be completing a conversation with Mike, and that can be scheduled directly onto his calendar. The next step is that there is a form that's submitted providing some of those qualifications and certificates of training, customer reference information and things of that nature. And then going forward from there, we do just ask, of course, that you represent the program positively, that you provide all of your customers with good customer experiences, answer questions in a timely manner, you know, provide follow-up and servicing of systems if that's something that you've provided the customer with, you know, a contract for and things like that. And that's pretty much the process in a nutshell. Next slide. So there's some additional detail here. I don't think I'll go too much in detail on it, but essentially you're just demonstrating that you have familiarity and expertise with the systems that you are installing. We want to make sure that you have certificates for you know, environmental and electrical purposes, and then, like I mentioned, just remain in good standing and represent the program positively. Next slide. So I think that covers it. I know that there was a lot of QA and some back and forth in the chat. Thanks for all of your engagement there. We can go through and take a look at some of those that haven't been answered. I know that maybe recent questions first, there was some conversation around the trade-offs between doing a solar hot water system versus doing something like a heat pump hot water heater and tying that to a solar PV system.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So a really good thing, so say with solar, say you have solar PV on your roof and you are running up a huge balance of net metering credits. So that means like kilowatt hours that you sold to the grid that you're waiting to be used. So that's how the net metering works. It's like you sell it to them, they need to sell it back to you at the full, at the same cost. And some people have a huge negative balance of it. They have thousands of kilowatt hours that are just waiting to be used. And say if you're not planning on adopting an EV, it could be a really good option to put in a heat pump hot water heater, because that's going to be another electric appliance that's going to be drawing from those kilowatt hours that you've already generated. Say that you're in the opposite scenario, you put on PV on the roof, you're still paying an electric bill, you're still buying kilowatt hours, and you're like thinking about what green or what clean technology to adopt. I would then say it would make more sense to consider solar thermal or solar hot water, because that's actually going to be eliminating kind of the need of buying the electricity from that amount. So it kind of like depends with how you're thinking about it, but that would be how I would choose between those two technologies. There was one question that I saw in the chat as well, where it was, is a ducted air source heat pump system a lot less efficient? And the answer on that one is it depends. So sometimes if a home is central AC and you have a gas furnace and there's a the indoor unit's just sitting on top of the gas furnace, there's like every single manufacturer has a heat pump, a replacement for that central AC. So it's awesome because you can use that heat pump, which was designed for the cooling load. So let's say like 3 tons of capacity, you can displace now like 3 tons of heating capacity with that heat pump. That doesn't mean that that system is going to be as efficient as, say, a single zone ductless system. That system maybe have a SEER of 15 versus a single zone ductless system where it'd be like a SEER of 30. Like, yes, it's less efficient than that, but a ducted heat pump can still be displacing a huge portion of the overall emission. So if you were designing your home to get off of fossil fuels, swapping out a central AC for a heat pump, and that's the full scope of the project, that's probably not going to get you where you need to go. It will need to be a bit more comprehensive than that, with like, I need a cold climate heat pump with no capacity drop off. So like a hyperheat unit or an XLHT unit or a Pro Performance unit from like a manufacturer, and I need to get rid of this gas furnace and have a specific air handler that's dedicated to the cold climate heat pump. And those types of systems have the same types of performance as a ductless unit. So we can totally get homes decarbonized with ductwork, but a lot of times this kind of more simple retrofit application will definitely get you in the step in the right direction, but it may not get you all the way there. And then I saw another question that I was like really interested in with relating to cost per new construction. And this is how I see it. So like, as I said before, you can run a heat pump the same way you would with a wood stove. So it really does depend on what you're trying to do with this equipment. So anytime that you're heating with forced hot air and you're putting in ductware, you're putting in registers in each and every room, like that is going to have a lot of labor, a lot of material that would be used. So there could be a case where it's like, yeah, we're going to simplify it. We're just going to put in 3 mini splits and call it a day. And now the mechanical system, instead of it being $35,000, it's $15,000. So you can really drive down the install cost, especially in new construction where mini splits are going to be perfectly fine. But as far as operating costs goes, the cost per kilowatt hour of electricity in Acton through Eversource right now, it's 24 cents, and the cost per therm is $1.50. So even with the heat pump running at a coefficient of performance of 3, it's still not going to provide, it's still not going to be providing, 100,000 BTUs per therm. Like there is a disparity, and I do think that there is I can't imagine that gas is going to stay as cheap as it is with the climate goals being as ambitious as they are. But if you do adopt on-site renewables, there is an opportunity to really bring that cost per kilowatt hour way down, and then it would be more cost comparative to natural gas or better than natural gas. So for new construction, it's like it depends. Like you can certainly make this more affordable over the lifetime of the system. But yeah, it's definitely a nuanced question that requires a lot of consideration, but especially with new construction, like you're not needing to bring in the gas, you're not all of that site work, you're not needing to worry about all of the venting and all the holes on the side of the building. So yeah, it's not apples for apples per se.
Thanks, Mike. There were a number of questions pertaining to ground source, and the first of those was about whether there are contractors that we recommend or can do home visits to survey the space. So the participating contractor list that Abode maintains does not have any ground source contractors on there currently. That's something that we envision expanding to. At the moment, it's just air source heat pump contractors. But Mike has said a lot about, the nuances of different homes and their goals and their needs. So I would encourage any residents, whether it's air source or heat pump air source or ground source that you're exploring, to schedule a consultation. And Mike does have contractors for ground source that he would be happy to refer you to during those consultations. Some of the other questions regarding ground source heat pumps here in the Q&A. Can a ground source heat pump be installed on a property in which the house sits on rock? So there are different loop configurations, but maybe you can talk about that a little bit, Mike.
Yeah, so that it just could be one of the things where the site work becomes cost prohibitive, where it may feel silly to spend $100,000 in drilling and excavating costs to install a ground source heat pump. So money can get you a lot in this country. So if there's a will, there's certainly a way, and there certainly would be contractors who would be up for the challenge. But I do think that that's typically one of the reasons why it's nice that we do live in a time where air and ground source are both market ready for us. So yeah, if it's ledge, if it's slate, whatever, they install ground source heat pumps throughout all of the Northeast in New York. It's one of the most potential, it's where a lot of these projects are going in, and the site conditions and soil conditions are extremely similar to what you would find in Acton. So yeah, but the solar, the geothermal installers would be able to walk you through exactly what that would be and what it would look like. And there's geographical maps that show like specific, like this is the soil, this is the type of soil and sediment, and that it would be in your area, and that is like broken down to, like they have resources where it really is broken down to town level.
There's another question there, and this may be too much of an apples to oranges, but is there anything that you can say in summary about the cost comparison between air source and ground source systems?
Yeah, and this is all informed with the CEC data, but with most ground source projects, they come in around like $60,000, with about 20,000 being site work, 20,000 like equipment, and then 20,000 for the full installation, electrical, all of those things. And I think most air source projects, if you are just putting in a ductless unit, it's like $4,000 to $6,000. But if you are doing a whole home, those do typically start creeping up to the $20,000 to $30,000 range, depending on what you're trying to do, the size of the house. But then you put in the federal tax credit, and that does take a huge portion off of the geothermal system. And the other real advantage with geothermal versus air source as well, which I didn't say, is like with the geothermal system, the loop, the outdoor unit, everything outside, that's going to last 100 years. With air source, it is more like 15 to 20 years for the outdoor equipment, which is the same as you would get with any like natural high efficiency boiler or high efficiency furnace. These things don't last 50 years anymore like they did when they're made of steel and cast iron. So I do think when you are thinking about geothermal, it's like, yes, it is a big investment, but that investment is going to go through a lot more than just one air handler or one heat pump. Like half of the system is still going to be here for you for the next upgrade cycle. So yeah, if like you're in your forever home right now, I would be equally considering geothermal as I would with air source heat pumps.
Great. So I think that's it for the questions that have come in thus far. We are running up on the end of our time here. I think if we could maybe flip over to the slide with our contact information, we can hang there for a couple of minutes and see if any last questions come in. But before people drop off, I just want to thank you all for attending. I'll turn it over to Andre in a moment here. But it was great to see so much engagement in the chat and with the questions. We're excited that we're working with a bunch of residents who are passionate about this and in some cases have undertaken projects like this already. So we look forward to working with you further. Hope you can maybe create a little bit of a buzz about the program, which we'll be launching shortly. And with that, I think we'll turn it over to Andrea for one last thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. For everyone who signed up, we'll be following up with a link to sign up for the official launch in September. And I really appreciate everyone spending their lunchtime with us. And we'll stay tuned via email if you have any questions. In the meantime, if you haven't signed up if you haven't filled out the Climate Action Plan survey, I really encourage you to do so. I should have had the link up here, but I have it right here. Okay. So I'll include the link in the chat in case you haven't had a chance to do so, just because I feel like folks here in the audience are maybe interested in our Climate Action Plan process. And there's links there once you end the survey on ways to be involved in the process. So other than that, thank you so much, and thank you to Abode. And we didn't get a chance to introduce the other folks on the line. Mel is our fellow here for until December for the town of Acton, and then Arjun is an intern with Abode, and who's at Tufts University studying very difficult things.
I should say we'll be with Abode full time starting September upon program launch. So. Lots of nice things starting in September.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, all.
Thank you, guys.
Talk to you shortly.
Yeah, talk soon. Bye, everyone.